Alright, so we are recording, and you get to say good morning, Zuko. You say good morning? The camera's right there. Say hello. Or maybe peekaboo. Tickle, tickle. Tickle, tickle. Oh, that feels good, doesn't it? That's nice. Alright, give me a kiss. Alright, I love you. Alright, I gotta go put Zuko away. Just hang out there, buddy. Okay, so back to work. We're going to pull up the walk cycle, and today we're going to go ahead and get it ready for ink and paint. So I'm going to go to the ink layer, turn it off, make sure that there's nothing important there. Okay, so actually before I get started on the inking process, I think what I'm going to do is clearly the collar part of his coat, which is parented to an empty, we're going to have problems with overlap, obviously, with the rest of the inking. Okay, so the basic idea is that we're going to do the inking in the traditional manner, which is black lines, and then do the coloring in Krita. So in the case of the collar, it's going to present a bit of a hassle, since we're going to go ahead and bake this color into the art, or into the sequence. And so we might as well go ahead and put this collar in, hard coat it with color baked in, and because it will also be parented to this empty, it will deform in the same manner over the course of the walk cycle, just like the sketch did. So if you didn't see that video, what's happening is just the collar of his coat is parented to an empty. Okay, this is one of the cool things about Blender. I have my blue pencil drawing, but actually the collar and the rest of it are, even though they're the same color, they're actually two separate colors. And so that allows me to separate them effectively like layers. And over here, I went ahead and put the collar in its own regular layer, so that that layer could be parented to an empty. Okay? Well, why did I do that? I did that because over the course of the walk cycle, let's go to here. Trying to find a balance here between zooming in and allowing you to see the whole walk cycle, which you pretty much can't. I have to keep panning. So, but the upshot is that here at the end of it, the empty that it's parented to was scaled a little bit. Okay, so as we move backwards, you can see this empty right here. It's a cube. It's an empty that was created as a cube shape. So what's happening is that cube is being squished this way, and I just thought it made the collar, it sort of married him to the character a little better. So then if we go back to the beginning of the walk cycle, it's a little wider, it's stretched out more, and you can see that the cube, if you can see it, the cube is more of a perfect square. So now we did that, why not leverage that effort? By the way, you see I'm wearing my tuxedo today. Suit and tie. Nice. Okay, so why not leverage that effort? And the way we'll do that is let's first of all quit soloing the collar layer. I have that I have a hotkey of Control Star on my numpad, which can either solo or not solo a single color. Okay. So let's select the ink color, but we want to put this ink in the collar layer. Once it's drawn, and I only have to draw it once, I can go ahead and just hide that color that the sketch is for rendering purposes. Now there is one other thing, actually, now that I'm stopping and thinking about it. I really should, let's do this. Let's create a copy of this color. Okay, so this is the color we used for his hair. And what I want is just a little bit more, what's the word? A more muted color for the collar. Okay, and I'm actually going to go ahead and create a copy of that as well. And then a little bit darker version. So that gives me the two colors that will comprise his overcoat. All right, and then later when I am working with it in Krita, I can always just sample those colors and use those for my fill colors. So why two colors? Basically the front, the part of the collar that's going to be in light versus shadow. At least that's what I'm thinking at this point. So let's get that in there, because this is going to be pretty quick. If we look at the collar layer here, let's go to grease pencil. Yeah, the collar layer actually only has a keyframe there. And so I'm going to stick to that. My goal is to just create a single keyframe drawing of the collar right here, and then we will, and I think we'll put it behind the head, and then we'll be done, because the animation of the empty will cause it to compress properly over time, just like the sketch did. And then what we'll do is we'll ink the rest of it just with black lines, and that's what we'll render out and send over to Krita. Okay, that's the plan. Okay, so I want my super smooth ink for this, and let me see here. Where is his head? Okay, his head is in the paint layer. So actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the collar layer up top so that it will fall behind this other layer. And actually, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to hit the star key, which for me solos the current layer. Okay, did that work? Okay, why does my solo key not work? That's interesting. Oh, I know why. Because I'm in object mode. Got to be in edit strokes mode. Blender needs everything's about context with Blender, and the context here is grease pencil. So when I'm in edit strokes mode, there it worked. Okay, so I soloed the collar layer. The reason I did that is I actually do not want to use the super smooth ink, because we're going to have a really sharp edge right here. Right here, it's going to come into a corner, and if it's smooth, it's going to round that out, and we don't want that. So what I'm going to have to do is draw the shape that I need, and then go ahead and smooth it with the smoothing tool. Okay, so I hit DE, and it is set on smooth as opposed to grab, and I should actually be able to do this with one single stroke. Am I that lucky today? Let's find out. Ta-da! Yeah, the sucker actually smoothed it a little bit right there. Oh, it's because it was still set on super smoothing. So that's my bad. I can fix that by grabbing this point right here, and let's scale. Let's see here. We need to have we've got to have proportional editing on. And I'm actually going to switch to the mouse. So I can hit the S key, and now just shrink down that level of influence. Tighten that corner right up. And you know, the way I think of it is, I don't mind doing the extra work of having to fine-tune the drawing or the model or whatever it is, if I only have to do it one time, right? So in this case, that looks pretty good. Now if I go ahead and I actually, let me see here. Let me go ahead and fine-tune this a bit, because whatever I do now, yes, I really like that. Because whatever I do now is going to be baked across the whole animation. So let's take a moment here and get it right. I'm going to go ahead and lock the color so I'm not accidentally grabbing those strokes. Okay, I like that quite a lot. And I think what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and, instead of using that, I'm going to go ahead and use my shadow. Okay, so the shadow is just black with an opacity of 0.15, and it'll allow me to go ahead and bake a shadow right into this, which I think will be quite cool. All right, so here's the way I'm going to do that. I'm just going to go ahead and draw a shape there. And let's go back to our unsmoothed ink, by the way, while I'm thinking about it. Okay, right there, and actually a little bit right there as well. Okay, that's it, man. I think we're good to go. Now that does beg the question, why not go ahead and put the interior of the shirt in here as well and just bake that in? Yeah, why not? Let's go ahead and do that. As long as we're here, I'm trying to save a little time. Let's just draw that shape. Okay, let me unselect that. That's fine. That'll work. Okay, and then, whoa. Okay, Control Z. Just must have hit the wrong key there somewhere. All right, hit the D key to draw. Actually, what I think happened was on the stylus, I think I accidentally grabbed the, I either hit the middle or right mouse button. So, draw. Okay. Let's put a nice little shadow there. As long as we're here and doing it, let's go ahead and do it right. Okay. I think that's pretty satisfactory. Okay, so now that, because those strokes are in the collar layer, then what's going to happen is over the course of the walk cycle, saving early, saving often. So now over the course of the walk cycle, you see that? Every single one of those strokes is scaled accordingly. So that's not too bad. Now there's only one thing that I don't like here, and that is the fact that right there, yep, between 45 and 51, or 50 actually, yeah. Between 45 and 50, this forearm is overlapping in front of the collar. So now the question becomes, do we care? Here's what I'm thinking. There's two ways we could deal with that. One is we could change the animation so his forearm doesn't come up as high. Number two, what we could do, since we're in the collar layer anyway, what if we were to, and this is set to projected 2D, so that's good. So now if we grab this, what if we just go ahead and let's just take a look at the most egregious point, which I think is right here. And let's just say, what if we grab this? Okay, I need to hit the comma key. If you hit the period key, how do I say this? Okay, I'm hitting the comma key to center rotation on the selected geometry. So whatever the area is that the selection comprises, the center of that area is where the rotation will be centered. If I hit the period key, the rotational center will be focused on the cursor. Okay, so that's really useful because if I set the cursor here and hit rotate, I'm actually going to, as you can see, rotate around the cursor, which is really good for like joints. Like you could put the cursor near someone's elbow, grab their entire forearm, and then rotate it and kind of save yourself some time by only rotating the section. You don't have to redraw it at that point, right? Okay, so what I'm going to do is hitting the period key. Okay, something seems funky right now. Let me look at this. Yeah, this is not right. Okay, so This is, you run into this with Blender all the time. Literally, every day there's something that comes up. Okay. I have this centered. I hit the, you can see that happening. So I hit the period key. So now we're centered on the cursor. I'm going to go ahead and turn off proportional editing and see what happens. I hit rotate, and I'm rotating this way, and what is happening does not by any stretch of the imagination resemble what should be happening. What I suspect is that the cursor is maybe not actually on the same plane as my drawing. I don't know when that would have happened, but let's just take a look. That does not seem to be the case. So I'm going to go ahead and center the cursor just to be safe. So I can sort of start clean here. Another possibility, strong possibility actually, is that there is another point of another stroke that's actually selected somewhere else on the screen and I don't realize it. That's one thing Blender does all the time. It remembers your last selection, which may be a benefit in some ways, but what I find is it's more of a pain. All right, so now what I'm going to do is put the cursor here, hit the period key, turn proportional editing back on. Okay, and it's still screwy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the A key to select all, and then right mouse click right there so that there's no way anything else is selected. And it's still behaving in a completely bizarre manner. Okay, look at that. It is as if it were rotating around a point somewhere out here, which makes no sense at all. I'm going to go ahead and rotate around. So it always frustrates me when you have to sit through this kind of stupidity, but it is what it is. I'm going to save my work, okay, and I'm going to kill Blender, all right, and I'm going to go ahead and run Blender again and hope that solves the problem, because I literally have no clue whatsoever why it's doing what it's doing, and all it's doing is interrupting our work, and it refuses to do it. It will not. I truly do not understand this. If anybody out there, am I missing the obvious? Is the answer right in front of me? Almost for sure. Almost certainly. I don't see it. So if you out there have the answer, I mean, look at what's happening here. We are rotating around a point right here. And I literally have no idea why. No clue. Okay, let's see. Let's take a moment and see if we can figure it out. Pivot center for rotation scaling, bounding box center. Okay. 3D cursor. Bounding box center, 3D cursor. So, like I said, folks, I really apologize. I have no idea what's going on. No idea. And don't want to take the time right now to figure out. So what I was trying to say is, if you out there are looking at this video and go, Dave, you're an idiot, here's what's going on, please message me. Put a message in the comments and tell me what is going on, because this is going to drive me bananas. Let me turn off proportional editing for a moment. And so if we move this, okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just go with it. Okay. So we have a keyframe here, and I'm going to delete that keyframe. Okay. So what I want to do is I'm going to copy this keyframe to here, and then I'm going to go ahead and interpolate there, and I'm going to interpolate there. So now the shape of the collar will change over time, and that's That's fine. That looks good. Okay, so that at least allows us to go ahead and render this thing out. And our stupid rotational issue, who cares, you know? All right, so one thing I will say about this process is that what I just did is very dangerous. Because if you go ahead and do what I've done here, which is interpolate your keyframes, if it turns out that there's something right here that needed to be changed, essentially you'll have to delete all the interpolated frames, fix that, and redo the interpolation. And I don't want to be cynical and say that invariably that's what will happen, but you know what? Invariably that's what will happen. The minute you make a hard decision and bake everything into a sequence, it is highly likely that for some stupid reason you're going to have to go in and change one thing, which means you have to completely delete all those keyframes and redo the interpolation. It's not the end of the world, but it's definitely a pain. So what I'm trying to say is that I would definitely prefer not to interpolate keyframes, especially because it's inherently 24 frames a second, and what we're really shooting for is a field that's more like 8 frames a second. So what's going on here in our animation is all these keys are going to be created at 8 frames a second, in essence. In other words, the keys are going to be less than either every third frame or less frequently. Okay. Except the collar. The collar, because Blender is interpolating keyframes, scaling that empty, and plus I put in the interpolated grease pencil frames. That collar is actually moving at 24 frames a second. Now, when that shows up in a real render, either like this in a really wide shot, okay, or even if it was in a close-up like this where the guy's walking across the frame, are we going to care? No, we're not going to care that it's 24 frames a second. So it's one of those things that we're just going to say, you know, let's let it go. Okay. Now, what's next? We can get this thing wrapped up. How are we doing on time? Man, 20 minutes today. Gosh. Well, I'm going to go ahead and I don't even remember what my layers are here. Okay, it looks like the ink layer is nothing. So what I'm going to do is hit the star key to unsolo that layer, and I'm going to go ahead and work in the ink layer. Actually, let's go ahead and lock the collar and the paint layer, which is kind of a dumb name. This is actually his head. So let's call that head. Save early, save often. Okay, so now we're in the ink layer, and we're just going to get busy because we have a lot of keyframes. Okay, and by the way, talking about interpolated keyframes, here's another problem with interpolating keyframes. It's actually the biggest problem. Because we have all these interpolated keyframes, when we go here and start inking this and I hit the up key to go to the next keyframe, guess what? It's not going to go to the next keyframe. It's going to go to the next frame, which means I have to go through and look and pay really close attention to only ink frames that are on the keyframes. So you say to yourself, well, is that dumb? Yep, that's dumb. So as I'm looking at it, I'm saying, this is stupid. Let's get rid of all those interpolated keyframes, do all the inking, and then if you really want to put in interpolated keyframes for the collar so that his arm doesn't overlap it, fine, we'll do it then. So I'm going to do exactly that. I'm going to start hitting Control Z until I see all those interpolated keyframes disappear. Okay, that's it. All right, I'm going to save my work again. Why is that on render? Yeesh. Save. Okay. So now what's going to happen is the collar is actually going to just jump out of the way right there. And what I'm going to do is move this back to about there. And that's okay. I mean, I don't even think we need to interpolate it. It just doesn't really matter. You're not going to be able to notice that when it's moving. So, lock, lock, unlock. Okay, and the actual keyframe we're starting on is number 8. As you can see down here, we're actually starting on frame 9. Just for kicks and giggles, I'll drop that back to 8. Save early, save often. It is finally time to ink. So do we want to use super smooth ink? I think so. Okay. Do we want the ink to be under or over the collar? I think pretty obviously we want it to be under. Now this, in my view, is kind of a... Blender's got it backwards, because the way Blender thinks of it is when it comes to these layers, it's like it's a stack. So each time you add a layer, it's added at the bottom, it comes last. Therefore, it is on top. I think that's probably backwards. What really should happen is if a collar or if a layer is on top, it should appear on top in the 3D view. That is not the case. It's the complete opposite. So, but that's okay. I mean, just kind of flagging that. But now what we can do is just start putting in our ink lines. And this should go fairly quickly. Okay, that didn't quite work. So I'm actually, yeah, I don't really like that. I'm going to go ahead and switch back to my other brush. So the other brush is, it's the same ink, but it's not smooth. I'm just finding the smoothing. When I used to be working with a stylus, it was more useful. But with the XP Pen Artist 15.6 tablet monitor, basically I can draw smooth enough lines freehand, so I don't really need the software to do smoothing for me too much. And in the rare cases where I do, I can just use the smoothing tools to go ahead and smooth out lines that are a little bit rough. Okay. Boy, I was getting irritated, wasn't I, earlier with that whole goofy rotation thing. Now you do need to sort of zoom in and make sure your shapes are closed. That's kind of important. Okay. And then in this case, draw that. Okay. Let's turn off the blue pencil sketch and the collar and see what we've got. That looks pretty good, except obviously we have a glaringly absent line. And by the way, we need to turn off that as well. Okay, so yeah, we've got a line noticeably missing. Okay. Okay, so now in this ink layer, I'm going to turn on the blue pencil again. Now the way I've got Blender set up, I have it set, I do not have additive drawing on. So that means that the minute I start drawing on this new frame, all the existing lines will be erased and it'll create a new keyframe. And what I find is for for freehand drawing, that's generally what I want. I generally don't want to have Blender think too much for me. And there's a time for that. It's like with the head and the collar. Only draw it once, maybe parent it to an empty, and then because all it's doing is translating over time. You could argue that it would be useful to do that with his boots, although the feet do change shape when they actually land on the ground. But so it's a judgment call. I sort of make a distinction between stuff that is moving versus stuff that is animated. If it's changing shape, I would say it's being animated. And at that point, you might as well just draw your keyframes by hand the way I'm doing here. If all it's doing is moving, then you could maybe get away with just drawing it once and doing some interpolated motion, again, possibly parenting to an empty. And you probably know this, but I say parent to an empty. You don't have to parent it to an empty. You can parent to anything you want. The camera, for example. Okay. Boom. Okay. Looks pretty good. Turn off the blue pencil. Okay. Actually, I don't think I'm going to put that in there. Okay. Blue pencil. And so now, you know, there's no shortcut. This is just a matter of doing the work, doing the drawings. That's actually going to cause more problems than it's worth. So I'm going to simplify that. When in doubt, simpler is almost always better. Now it's kind of interesting here. I notice that I forgot to draw the detailing on his shoe. So let's go back one frame. Let's turn the onion skins on. Okay, the onion skins will help us. Okay. Now you could criticize some of these shapes, but as I've mentioned before, this is all going to blow by so fast that we just don't really need to nitpick it. Having said that, we don't want to be too careless. We'll pull out and review here in a moment and see how things are moving. So again, this shot is a wide shot. We're not going to see much detail at all. And if we were to go to a close-up version of it, which we will almost certainly do, we're only going to be seeing him from the waist up. So the niggly details on the boots just don't matter that much. Boom, boom. Okay. Let's hit escape, turn off the blue pencil, and just review. Whoa, and there runs away his head. Okay. All right. If you listen really closely, you might hear me counting. A strange habit I have. If I'm really trying to move quickly, I count. It's like I'm timing myself or something. All right, so I'm going to try to get this hand done in 8 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Did it. Okay, so you may be different than me that way. It's just something I do. Just something I do. Sounds like the magic of oil painting the way I'm talking here. I should be talking about happy little clouds. Come on. Erase. Okay. Did I get it all? I think I did, except there's no button. I forgot the button. Okay. So one of the nice things about the way I'm working here is that I can start drawing behind where his collar is, and of course all those lines will be covered up by the part that's already colored, so that's kind of handy. Probably if you were going to criticize my methodology here, one of the things that you definitely would probably note is that the hand shape doesn't change from frame to frame, so why am I redrawing it? That's kind of dumb. And I would agree with you. This is one of those cases where it's probably faster to just draw it over and over than to go in and come up with a better solution, which would mean drawing the hand once and probably parenting it to an empty so that I just translate it, from frame to frame. Whatever. Okay, I'm going to start with the boot here. And I'm actually going to try to speed things up here a little bit. Ready? Boom, boom. You know, I'm trying to think of this in terms of, you know, what if I really was in an animation studio on the clock and we got to get the episode out? How are you going to work? Well, you can argue that, you know, be careful, Dave. You don't want to get all sloppy just because you're on a deadline. And I would agree with you. The question is, what matters? Are we doing what matters? Here we have a little bit of an issue that I would like to fix. Okay. And frankly, I'd like to also see, kind of bugs me that, yeah, right here we have a little bit of an issue. Okay, boom, boom, that's going to be there. So I don't even know where this line should be, but I'm just gonna take a stab here. What the heck is going on? Oh, I see. My bad. My bad. Let me do that again. Okay. This is going like that. Okay. You know, like I say, we don't have all day here. We gotta get this done. I'm gonna actually hit that with the smoothing tool. Okay. Where's our... Okay. I think what we'll do is we'll do this. We'll go... Okay, we got a little glitch there. Okay. All right. Boom. Okay, put that there, that there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You know, we're going for speed and accuracy. Okay, so we may get to the inking process and, you know, find some gaps in there that give us some grief. Before I render this out, I don't like that. Before I render this out, I'll do a quick check. So you say, wait, what are you doing, Dave? I am blocking in my keyframes right now because I'm becoming a little impatient, and that's fine. I want to speed up the process by turning it into an assembly line operation. So what does that mean? Well, that means that all I'm interested in doing is animating this one line. That's all I care about at this point. Okay, that's it. Now we can come back here, catch this line, and this line, back. Okay. back. So, not to take anything away from the potential, potential, let's say, artistry of this animation, but there is a point in the process where you say, look, I know what I'm going to do. We're not really making creative decisions here. We're just trying to execute, get it done. So at that point, you get a little more pragmatic. Okay, that's flawed right there. Let's fix that. This line actually comes down here, but then this comes to there. So that's wrapping very tightly around his boot and the back of his leg. Okay. Okay, good. So now we're going to do what I said I wasn't going to do, but I'm going to do it. Because now that I'm thinking a little bit, I realized there's an easier way to do it, which is this. Select linked, copy. Control V. Still got our absolutely ridiculous rotational thing going on. Got no idea why. Let's see what happens. Oh, now it seems to be behaving itself. That's interesting. We're not going to grok that right now and try to figure out why it's seemingly repaired itself, but I'm glad it did. Control Z. I say Control C. It sounded like I said Control Z. All right. Yep. Something has changed. Well, it's just, if something's merely moving as opposed to changing shape, why are you going to draw it over and over and over? Well, I was doing just that for a bit, but I ran out of patience, apparently. So, and as the animator, that is my prerogative. I think we got maybe one more keyframe to go here. Is that it? Nope, there's one more. Zip this in. Yeah, there's literally one more. And that's it. Save early, save often. Unselect that. is it? All right, go back one frame. Boom. So I'm definitely not claiming the crown for absolutely superb either animation or artistry in the drawing here. But I think it looks okay. Now this is interesting. There's a whole section here. Okay. I guess I was sufficiently confident that I didn't need to draw his leg. Okay. So I think to be safe, how am I going to handle that? Well, I'm going to roll back here to here. Okay. Let's go ahead and get this inked in properly. That's not quite right. Okay. So what I'm going to do is go back to sort of a point that's known. In other words, where everything was drawn. That way I can because otherwise, what's probably going to happen is I'm going to be working backwards from later keyframes, and they're not going to meet. They're not going to meet in the middle properly, so that would be problematic. So in order to avoid that problem, I want to see what's going on here with the... Okay, so this should actually be doing something like this. Yes, I like that. Okay. Okay. Don't forget the rear foot. It's currently planted on the ground. Okay. It is interesting to think about how, when you think about the classic animation of the past, and I'm not referring to like Disney animation. I'm talking about TV cartoons that were made, on a very, very rigid budget. And the kinds of decisions that were made, and I see myself wanting to make those kinds of decisions, such as making the boots really simple, giving them a nice flat sole, don't give it a lot of texture or whatever, right? I guess it creates a lot more work. So if you're going to have that detail, you go, well, let's make sure the detail is justified, right? Again, there are going to be purists who are going to say, well, you're compromising quality or something. And to which I say, everything about my workflow here with animation is bearing in mind the requirements of economy. Whoops, I don't want blue pencil. I want ink. It just is what it is. We want to have a workflow that, on the one hand, is pragmatic, but on the other hand, is creatively satisfying as well. So it's not either or, it's both and, which does demand compromises. Does demand compromises. And that's okay. That's the price you pay to get the job done. Because ultimately, what am I after? I'm after literally nothing other than storytelling. If the storytelling is there and the entertainment level is there, then I'm fine with it. So I can look at an old cartoon like, when you look at Johnny Quest, for example. That's a good example of sort of an old school show that really, okay, now we're getting too sloppy. Some aspects of that show were very well done artistically, and some aspects of it were very economical, very cheeseball, you could even say. But in total, the overall experience was positive and entertaining. Oops. So, I'm not trying to rant here, or frankly, I definitely have a certain preference for being really meticulous about quote-unquote quality, meaning, you know, the animation, the rendering, the drawing, everything about it is absolutely top shelf. But when we think that way, there's kind of two problems. One is, maybe I'm not that talented. You know, maybe I'm really not that talented. Now, you can pay the price and develop your skill. And I would contend that if a person has very modest or mediocre talent, if they're willing to work at it, they can develop the skill and the craft that will allow them to, compete favorably. We have a little bit of a problem here. It's going to go by in one frame, so I don't care. I'm going to let it go. That's definitely not working. So yeah, to an extent, I'm starting to sort of go too fast and maybe make too many compromises. But for me, that's part of what I am trying to discover here, is at what point in this process does my patience run out? Do I say, okay, I just don't care anymore. I just want to get it done. I'm not saying that's a good thing. I'm saying it's a natural thing. It's a part of the process that everyone goes through. And you have to, well, you don't have to, but I think it's fine to integrate that sort of dynamic into your process. In other words, I'm not necessarily trying to create great animation. I'm trying to create good enough animation given the time and budget constraints that I'm going to be dealing with. But most importantly, telling a good story. So, we want to tell a good story. Okay? And I think actually one of the interesting things to explore in that process is literally the question of how much can we get away with in terms of economy. I think we might be getting close to the end of the line here. I think we are at the end of the line. Okay, so there's some parts of this that I will be the first to say look a little cheesy, a little economical. Okay, but having said that, this guy seems to have a limp. But the only part that actually is bothering me is right here at the end. Right there. Now, yes. So how can we fix that? Well, what I think we're going to do is we're going to go here. Here's how we're going to do that. I'm going to grab this. I'm going to go ahead and delete those strokes. I'm going to delete them here. Oh, well, I actually don't have to select linked if I delete strokes as opposed to deleting points. So okay. Okay, and the way I'm going to solve this is I'm actually going to grab this. All right, I'm going to Control C that. Okay, and let's turn on our onion skins and let's turn on our sketch. Boy, the interesting thing about this is that this is pretty accurate. I mean, this is rotoscoped, so this is what Donio was doing. But it doesn't matter what he was doing if it doesn't look good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to simply adjust it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the cursor right here, and I'm going to hit the period key so that I can literally anchor that leg just like that. Okay, and each time I'm going to hit Control C. So I can go ahead and place that properly. All right. Okay, so that means that this stroke needs to be deleted. Okay. Now all I have to do is go in and patch it. All right, so that means let's go ahead and turn the blue pencil off. We don't need it anymore. We can turn onion skins off. Now it's all cleanup work. Okay, so let's just clean it up. Clean that up. Okay, let's delete all this. Let's make sure we have closed shapes. There's the edge of the boot. That works. This works to that point. Okay. All right, save early, save often. Now let's see what we have on our walk cycle. Okay, so significantly, this guy does seem to have a limp. Which is kind of interesting. Because then the question becomes, well, do we just adjust the story to say that the guy has a limp? Or do we fix the limp? Well, since it was rotoscoped, I think we have to stick with the dictates of the background image. Yeah, my original walk cycle, I think I deleted or moved the file, so I can't really even look at that anymore. But altogether, not too horrible. Okay, so now the question is, what we're gonna do is render this out, and then we will go ahead and bring it into Krita, color it, and then we need to put some sort of background behind it. So that looks good. I really like that. I like that. I like that. If you have criticisms about the boots, bear in mind that the only time you're ever going to see those boots is in a shot that looks about like that. It's literally going to be that wide. Okay? So it's just not going to matter. In fact, what I'm foreseeing, I don't know why that just did that, but what I see is this guy's walking over an overpass. You got a sort of a dark night city behind him, so it's kind of dark. So there's a lot of considerations coming into play here that say we don't necessarily need to nitpick the boots. So what I'm seeing is he's walking along, and I'm thinking he actually might be going this way. So we see this, and then we probably see this, actually more like that. And then we'll probably jump to a wide shot, and we'll use multiple renderings of this same cycle to tell the story. And then, of course, there was another shot I did on another day that showed this same guy from a close-up. Let me see if I have that. I literally don't know if I even have that. And in fact, to have it, I would have to remap a certain network drive, so I'm not going to deal with that right now. But okay, so that's it for today then. I'm going to save this, and next time what we'll do is we will color it, and if we have time, we'll go ahead and map it to a background, see what the final result looks like.